Hey everyone, it is Kevin Henry, the co-founder of Ignite DA. Hope you all are doing well, and always glad to be joined by a good friend and partner in crime business-wise, Dr. David Rice. Dave,
hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. I am good. Beautiful day, and looking forward to a good talk here.
I am too. We're back again. Those of you who missed last time, great friend of ours, Gavin Shea. How are you, Gavin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
You betcha. You know, listen, Gavin, let's just jump right in because, we were having a little chat before we started to get rolling here, and you have tremendous insight, I think, on what's happening in dentistry right now as different parts of the country open up, and we're all on this timeline at a little different stage. But, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity to talk to the group again. And, we're probably a month into where, we talked about this the last time. And so we're seeing some different moving parts. Our customers are distributed across the country within dentistry as our primary customer base in our loan portfolio. So we're tracking states, we're tracking counties, and we're just tracking the behavior of our different business owners that have some loans with us. And as well as the industry as a whole. One of the things that I would want to share with this audience that I've shared with my own team, it's a short phrase that I think really encapsulates everything that's happening or has been happening. And I really lean into the words that says, everything is new for everyone at the same time. And if you just take that phrase and you port it into all of these different moments that have occurred over the last 8 weeks, you'll find a lot of truth and pattern in those comments. And, one thing I'll break down is the everything new part. It doesn't matter if you've been in this business for 20 plus years or 2 months. There is not a legacy bit of knowledge that I think can apply to this current situation. So those that take the time to really lean in and understand the markets around them and the data that's available and the diverse data that's available, right? There's so many different opinions about what's going on. It's really hard to just lean into one source like you might have, relied on in the past. It really requires somebody to kind of take a full run at everything that's available, from the most optimistic to the most pessimistic. Everything new happening to everyone. What's great about that, the value there, is that it provides perspective. Your unique view to what's happening might not be the same view that your neighbor has. And it's a really good conversation among peers to see, hey, what's happening with you? For example, within my own team, we look at the map that the ADA has put out that shows the green states and the orange states based on where they are in reopening. And I've encouraged my team, if you're in an orange state, call somebody in a green state. Find out what's happening over there, because they're probably a week or 2 weeks or a month ahead of you. And there are some lessons learned there that you can borrow and be of more value to those that are coming a little bit further behind in that growth and that reopening. The part that everything is happening to everyone at the same time is a little bit of a cautionary aspect to it, because every single moment that we've gone through has been met with a mass pursuit of some option at the same time, which has put a capacity strain on any one of those resources that's supposed to deliver that. So we saw that with the PPP loans. We're seeing that with unemployment benefits. So many people rushing in to get something at the same time. No organization is equipped to manage to that level of capacity. It's just not feasible to do that. So one of the cautions that I would put out there for doctors, people listening in here, is if you're asking for anything with a sense of urgency, that's probably a risk that you need to try and mitigate for yourself, because that deliverable time frame is probably not going to be available to you in this moment like it was, 6 months ago when you could call up the bank, get a line of credit and have it happen in a day or two. You're going to want to mitigate some of that delay somehow on your own side and just be prepared for that as you move into phases, knowing that there's a whole lot of people moving into those phases alongside of you.
It's great advice. It's great advice. Kev?
One thing that you mentioned in there is the learning from each other. We're all going through this at the same time. And one thing that I've seen is that everybody's real quick to hop on the negative side of what's going on right now. But I'm loving these posts where I actually see people helping each other and saying, these are the good things that happen today. What are you all seeing? I think that we tend to, it's easy to focus on the negative, but the positives that we're seeing out there and pushing those out, I think are so important right now as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll share a couple of nuances that we're seeing within that. Going to the negative place is a healthy exercise, right? To never really explore the worst that could happen, puts you in a position of being naive and ill-prepared. The key is to go to that place, assess it, and then develop your solution to get out of it, right? So, for example, you may have a situation where the regulations associated with cleaning your operatories are going to increase the amount of time per patient in your office. And you might be in a situation where instead of seeing 15 patients per day, you're going to see 12. And to stay in the negative would say, okay, what's that going to reduce my annual revenue by? Let me do the math and say, okay, that's a 10% reduction in revenue. That's just what I'm going to have to live with. The other way to do it is to say, okay, if I'm only going to be able to have 12 patients in my office per day, what am I going to do to maximize the opportunity and maximize the value of those patient interactions? So can I use teledentistry to do some pre-screening to make sure that the patients that sit in that operatory on a Tuesday are the ones that really need it? And maybe I defer some of those less urgent cases to some other time when I'm not as constrained with the capacity. So it's just a matter of going to that negative, but not just projecting the trajectory, but developing a plan of what you're going to do about it.
Yeah, it's a great point, Gavin. And because there are so many things we can do, teledentistry is being one. You have 12 patients in your practice. Maybe they live over here for restorative, but your hygienist is open on the other side. There's so many opportunities if we look to be very solution focused. And I love that comment. Like it's healthy to get to that negative, but to go there understanding that you're doing that to find solutions to come out instead of living over there, which, boy, if you guys have seen a lot of the Facebook groups out there, I can't say on them more than 3 minutes. They're tough.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes people benefit from sharing the negative because, again, that's a perspective that helps them understand that it's not me, it's us, right? And again, it's okay to understand that you didn't uniquely cause that problem, but you're the only one that's going to uniquely drive the solution. And that's the part that you have to kind of get yourself back to. And I think that, one of the things that we're going to see, and I've been talking about this within my own group, is there's a have and a have not group through this. I don't know what percentage of dentistry is going to be in the have and the have not, but I understand the characteristics of the group that's going to be in the have. And those are the ones that kind of, again, get to that obstacle, look for the solve, and develop a plan to get out of it, and hold themselves, again, accountable for the solution while they can dismiss themselves from being accountable for the problem.
Yeah, and it's mindset as much as resources, to be perfectly honest. And I think that's one of the biggest things that, and we've all hit different walls at different points during this and everything else, but to figure out how to climb over or go around that wall. So like you said, such a key point.
Right. And I'll tell you, one of the things anecdotally that I was going to share on the positive side is, we work with a lot of different groups of clients at stages of their career. We do, mid-career expansion investments. We do practice acquisition loans, and we do startups. And one of the interesting things is, as we talk to some of our clients that have recently done startups, we're finding that they're feeling a little bit more optimistic in the reopening states than some of those that have been operating their practice for several years. And I think there might be two factors to that. One is psychological, one is physical. The physical part is, a lot of these startups have been built recently, been, new equipment, the look and the feel of the practice, has a cleanliness aspect to it built in. That's maybe the bottom. The other side is the psychological. If you've done a startup in the last year, you know that you're hustling every day to bring those patients into the practice. And if you have one patient today and you have two tomorrow, you're happy. That's progress. So there's a little bit of a different mindset happening, whereas somebody that might have had 10 patients a day and is now down to 5 is more focused on the loss aspect than they are, the gain aspect. And so it's just a different mindset, and we'll have to see how that shakes out. It's still too early to tell. But one of the things that we're following really closely is the ADA Health Policy Institute surveys that have been conducted for the last, I think they're a month and a half in. They do these waves now. And it's very helpful to understand not just the data, but they're also reaching into the psychological aspects of returning to dentistry and asking owners and trying to understand their mindset as they reopen. And that will help us understand, how we might be able to coach some of our clients, as well as identify groups of clients that have a higher propensity for, leaning into being open versus those that are leaning out.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, let's face it, right? We're all, to your phrase, we're all looking at the same experience at the same exact time, and roughly, half the world believes they have control over their destiny, and the other half believes destiny has control over them. But it's the same exact situation. So I think all of you watching, like, we all have a choice. We can choose to let it take over, or we can take it over using data. And I love your comment on expanding that breadth of knowledge and data that we look to, instead of just looking to one source, to look to a variety of sources to really get a full scope of what's happening out there across the country at different times. And so, Kevin, you have access to a ton of data as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to, like you said, Gavin, the Health Policy Institute is doing such a great job, and I hope is checking on that. There is a lot of data out there. I know Sika Software has built some things. There's a lot of different interpretative data, but absolutely, I would rely on the Health Policy Institute for so much. Marco and his team are doing a great amount of work there for sure. Right,
and I think I appreciate the value of that data is the diversity of the survey, in terms of different sizes, different, ages of practice. I mean, it's a pretty well-rounded and built group that has a fairly reliable sample size so that you can try and understand how that applies, to certain types of practices, whether it's a geographic distribution or whatnot. It's been really helpful for us. I'm looking forward to the next release because they asked one of those questions that talks about why a doctor is choosing not to reopen. And, knowing a little bit of that, I think will be important to try and assess what kind of cap we might have on this reopening growth. And I'll break it down to something else that we're looking at, is that there are 3 layers to overcome in opening. One is the doctor needs to decide that it's safe for them to reopen their business and have that capacity to move forward. The second is you got to talk to your staff. And do they want to come back? Do they feel safe? That's an aspect that needs to be addressed. And then when you get through that, you got to find out if your patients are going to want to come back. And so if there are certain portions of this data that show a greater versus less than propensity to return to work, you have to kind of take those variables and layer that into your staff and then layer that into your patients. So if there's a certain age group, for example, where 50% of the doctors don't want to return to business, well, the psychology of not returning to business is very similar to the psychology of a staff member or a patient. So if your staff is of a similar demographic, then you have to apply certain percentages there, as well as your patients. So when you look at that data as a business owner, what's great about it, and this is where the happening to everyone comes into play, that data is applying to your patients and your staff as much as it's applying to your business. And to be able to extrapolate that and plan for that, I think is the important part that might be overlooked, but I would encourage those that are viewing that data to apply it to the universe around them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll make sure if everybody's watching that we throw a link down here to the latest update, but keep in touch, designate somebody on your team. If it's not going to be you, make sure somebody on your team is constantly surveilling as much data as they possibly can. Kev, any other thoughts?
Last one I'd say is I know everybody's busy. I know everybody's focused on their situation, but make sure you expand outside that bubble. Make sure that you get that information. Folks like Gavin, the ADA Health Policy Institute, there's a lot of people out there to really be judging what is really happening out there. And again, extrapolate it down to what it means for you as well. Yeah.
Gavin, any last thoughts? Any last piece of advice?
You know what, I just, anybody that's been on this webinar, the series that you are hosting and the different perspectives that you're bringing in, what I would give to those that are here is, as advice, is tell a friend. For everybody that, can lean in on this, the more successful we will be as an industry, and really grab at that information, and also be diverse in your sources. There's lots of different perspectives out there. And gathering them all as a business owner is probably the most important thing that you can do for yourself, your staff, your patients, and the fellow peers that you have in this industry as we all look to reopen and rebound together.
Yeah, awesome point, Gavin. So everybody, take a good look. All of these are stored on ignitedds.com. We've got a lot of different folks coming in here who know a lot of different folks, who know a lot of different folks, and so on down the line. But was it Henry Ford who said, if you think you can, you're right. And if you think you can't, you're probably still right. So go to that side, like Gavin said, get all the data, get all the information that you can, but believe that you can, and hang around those who believe that too. And you know what, gang, we're going to be okay. So thanks for watching, everybody. Gavin, thank you so much for your time from Wells Fargo. Kevin, Henry, good to see you as always. Cheers, guys.
Hi, thanks for having me.